Now, here we've got Nigel Farage reveals he would work with any party to deliver no deal Brexit. And this is in a show called Good Morning Britain.
Party. Why? Because we trusted Theresa May, we trusted the Conservative Party to deliver Brexit. They didn't do it, so I formed the Brexit Party. We won the European elections. We reset the agenda. I mean, if we hadn't been formed, Theresa May would still be Prime Minister. Now, Boris Johnson has picked up all the lines we used in that campaign. Yeah, because we're winning. We've completely reset the British agenda. And of course now, no deal, leaving with a clean break Brexit is the most popular option. However, we now find ourselves in a very similar position to that with Mrs May. Boris has won the leadership, telling us he will take us out on the 31st of October. But what he's done in the last week is he's gone back to Brussels and clearly he wants to reheat the failed withdrawal agreement that was 3 times rejected by the House of Commons. And if we leave...
But without the backstop?
Even without the backstop, it's still the worst deal in history. Even without the backstop, it costs us 39 billion. It makes it virtually impossible for us ever to leave the customs union. We will not be a free, independent nation. So we are standing, and we will stand in every seat in this election. And we say to Boris Johnson, if you sell us out on Brexit, with this awful withdrawal treaty, we will fight you in every seat.
Nigel, if you're right in that analysis,
yeah,
why is it that your poll figures are dropping and his figures and the Conservative Party's figures are rising? If he's actually pulling a fast one and he's going to give us Theresa May's reason
people haven't realised yet.
So we're too stupid to see it?
No, because it's too early. This only began to happen last week, and you've got the loud noise says we'll leave with no deal on the 31st of October. And you actually look at what is being said by Macron, Merkel, by Boris Johnson. Boris, in a letter last week, said it was his highest priority to get a withdrawal agreement.
Even
we want a clean break Brexit.
Even if...
Right, that's interesting. Now, I think we need to go to Dominic Raab, which is here. If I can get it out. Yeah. Now, with Dominic Raab, there's an interesting thing about Amanda Rudd. Here we go. Here we don't go.
Discussed Amber Rudd's resignation a little bit earlier. Just want to have a look at what she said in her resignation letter when it comes to the deal. Because she said one of the main reasons for quitting is, I no longer believe that leaving with a deal is the government's main objective. The government is expending a lot of energy to prepare for no deal, but I have not seen the same level of intensity go into our talks with the European Union, who have asked us to present alternative arrangements to the Irish backstop. I mean, lots of people will read that and will be worried.
Well, first of all, it's not correct. Firstly, because we have had intense negotiations. David Frost, the political appointment, but the special advisor to the Prime Minister, Steve Barclay's been out. I've been out to Helsinki to speak to EU foreign ministers. I've seen a whole range of them to talk about Brexit, but also all the other issues we're working on. But also one point about the no-deal planning. Of course, that is crucial to getting a deal, because it sends the message to Brussels that we want a deal, we've set that out, but also that we're going to leave at the end of October if they continue to play hardball. So
exactly, if they keep pulling us over a barrel. And remember, the Remainers, or the more knowledgeable Remainers, that might not be the right word, but do not, they're in alliance with the globalists, which were the bankers. And the European Union is the central of the globalists' one world order. I call it, and I think a lot of other people would agree with me, the one world satanic order. So this is actually what we're dealing with, and they can't be trusted. They've got a completely different idea of what they want for humanity. Now, what he talks about Amanda Rudd, that's completely wrong. And we really have to be very responsible. It serves us to be very responsible in what we report, in what is said, and because the news channels will spread that. So you're getting, in President Donald Trump's lingo, fake news. Sometimes it's done intentionally, and sometimes it is done by carelessness or not getting one's facts right. So I think this is the most difficult thing, actually, of finding out who you want to share with other people. Now, having said that, one of the people
Those two things are actually linked, and the big frustration I've got this week is MPs that have tried to take no deal off the table, explain that they want an extension. That sends the EU the wrong message at the wrong time.
I mean, the main...
Well, that jumped in too soon, so we'll play it again.
We're working on, but also one point about the no deal planning. Of course, that is crucial to getting a deal, because it sends the message to Brussels that we want a deal, we've set that out, but also that we're going to leave at the end of October if they continue to play hardball. So those two things are actually linked, and the big frustration I've got this week is MPs that have tried to take no deal off the table, explain that they want an extension. That sends the EU the wrong message at the wrong time.
I mean, the main thing stopping a deal, though, is the fact that you want to get rid of the backstop, but the EU says you have to come up with alternative proposals. Have you actually come up with some different plans?
There are a clear whole range of possibilities. We've got the Prime Minister's letter, which sets out the framework for it, and David Frost and Steve Barclay have been working through the detail.
What are the... have you actually put forward anything?
So
Right, I'll leave that for that moment. Right, here's Dr. Steve Turley, brilliant. Listen to him. Brexit betrayal. Tory traitors bring Britain to the brink of snap elections.
Blocked Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit plan, leading the UK to the brink of snap elections. That's what we're talking about on today's video. You know, we're going to cut through all of the confusion and disarray, and we're going to get right... It's never a dull moment. Britain may now be facing what I believe is the 5th national election in 4 years. Literally overnight, very similar to what we saw in Italy, right, with the collapse of their governing coalition there literally overnight. Britain's government was thrown into chaos just within the last 24 to 36 hours, if you were not aware. I'll try to give you here just a quick breakdown of the events as they happen. First, you had a supposed member of the Conservative Party, okay? That's Prime Minister Boris Johnson's party, the Tories, or the Conservatives. They're known by both names if you get confused there. You have this member going rogue, okay? He went rogue and defected to the Soviets, okay? He's a hardcore Remainer who defected from the Conservatives and joined the far-left Liberal Democrats. That defection cost Johnson dearly in terms of what remained of the razor-thin majority he had to work with in Parliament. Now, as the result of that defection, Boris couldn't afford to lose a single member of the Conservatives or from the Democratic Unionist Party from Northern Ireland. The Conservatives are in coalition with the Unionists. Then later on in the evening, the Parliament voted 328 to 321 to wrench control over the Brexit process from Boris and formally reject any possibility of a no-deal Brexit. And this passed only because 21 Tory members, the so-called Tory rebels, themselves defected and voted with Labour in order to scrap a no-deal Brexit. What this means then is that now Boris is handcuffed. He will not be able to carry out his pledge to leave the European Union by October 31st. And so these members of parliament are actually coming out and saying, if you can believe it, that there needs to be a third delay, a third extension. Now, Boris isn't taking this sitting down. He fired those 21 Tories. The technical term is they lost the whip. Again, technically speaking, a whip consists of the formal instructions members of a party are given in terms of how to vote so that the party in power is able to effectively exercise its majority. By losing the whip, these 21 Tories will not be allowed to run as Tories, as Conservatives in the next election, unless the whip is restored. So they're basically sitting in Parliament right now as default independents at this point.
Now, that leaves space, and I think he'll stick to his word, he won't bring them back again, for Nigel Farage's Brexit Party people to go into those constituencies and, all being well, win. Now, I'd like to bring the Stephen Turley's other video up. That previous one was on the 4th. This one is on the 5th. And its globalist elites show contempt for voters on both sides of the Atlantic.
Hi there, everyone. We do appear to be seeing the last remnants of a globalist dictatorship as elites show contempt for voters on both sides of the Atlantic. That's what we're talking about on today's video. We'll also be looking at why the latest power grabs in Westminster and beyond are nothing more than the last gasp of an old political order that's ready to once and for all collapse. But first, I'm sure we've all... Michael Barone over at the Washington Examiner has a great piece out on how elites abandon norms and show contempt for voters on both sides of the Atlantic. The piece is very, very interesting because it sees so clearly what's really going on here.
I think this is the most important thing. I think he's a tremendous analyst and really get this. I mean, I think many people have.
More and more pundits like Barone are recognizing that the fundamental divide in our respective nations is no longer a divide between liberal versus conservative or left versus right. The divide really is now between globalists versus nationalists, elitists versus populists. Remember, the pollster Scott Rasmussen wrote about this back in a book in 2010 called Mad as Hell, and he found substantial data there that showed that there was, in fact, a major paradigm shift taking place among the American electorate, and of course I would argue among the world electorate, right, where the old political divides between left and right, and liberal versus conservative, were dying away, and a new political divide between the people versus the ruling class, or the populace versus the political, economic, and media elite. That was the new political divide that was opening up. And here in the States, of course, Donald Trump, more than any other political candidate, recognized that divide back in 2016 and became its emblematic champion. And across the pond, Brexit represented the apex of the political earthquake that began the process of toppling globalist governments in Poland and Hungary and Austria and Italy and Georgia and Brazil, and put all others on notice that the days of this globalist dictatorship are numbered. A new nationalist, populist, traditionalist age is in fact rising. And so Barone has this piece in the Washington Examiner that sees precisely these dynamics operative here on both sides of the Atlantic, where globalist elites recognize that the people have indeed revolted, and now the elites are doing everything they possibly can to survive the revolt, to quell the revolution. Here's a little bit of what he wrote here.